Yo. Hello. Bark, bark, bark. Dude, why is my camera up here? Dude, what's up? Nice hat? Dude, basically my hair is a hat right now. My hair is so long. I need to... Actually, I'm kind of liking it long, honestly. But I gotta get the, like, sides cut a little bit. Because it, like, poofs out crazy. You know? When was the last time bro wore a hat on stream? It's been a long time. Probably like 6 months, actually. Sometimes I just randomly do it. Dog's enjoying the new couch, I see. Yeah. Where's Ella? Oh yeah, no, they're doing good. They're good, man. So what has happened since I last streamed? I guess they've announced the date. Is it earlier than you guys thought or later? It's like pretty quick. I mean, the patch is out in like a month. But I guess maybe it's not that quick because I mean it was like 2 months into this season where people were like, "I'm bored. Where's the next season?" How many mounts have you farmed, dude? I actually like part of me, a very small part of me, like wants to log in and like use this one chance to like get some mounts that I haven't gotten before. There's like two specifically I would go farm, but I just can't. You just can't catch me logging in. I don't know. I mean, they'll probably do this again, but also if I'm not doing it this time, would I care about it next time? I just think I just don't care. You know what I mean? The transmog drops are off the chain too. Oh wait, they buffed transmog drops? I mean, how does that even work? Did they just make more items drop from the boss? Oh shit. New tier set tuning just now? Yeah. We'll look at all this stuff. Yeah, the monk buff thing's really interesting. I have some thoughts on that. We'll wait till it I like read it. I heard about it. I didn't like read their thoughts or anything. Potty C. We've recorded a Potty C within the last couple days. I think Monday. So yesterday, maybe Sunday. I don't know. It's not out yet. Probably waiting a little bit or something. But yeah, we didn't. We basically took it took like a week and a half in between episodes because Dratnos was out of town. Max, the spike ball mechanic is sweet, but looks so toxic on PTR. Oh, you mean like last phase of Nexus King? Uh, yeah, I guess. I think people usually trick themselves like that, though. Like, you're used to seeing what a strat looks like when it's, like, been fully formulated over hundreds of pulls, and then you pull up to a boss, and then you do it, and it looks pretty. But people trick themselves on PTR. They see a mechanic one time, and they're like, yo, that looks insane. But you just haven't looked at anyone attempting to solve it yet. Right? It's the same vibes as, like, every single testing cycle. Like, all the class discords are up in arms about how bad Melee is in this current tier, and it's because Melee haven't figured out how to get uptime yet, and no one's making strats for uptime because they don't care. They're just trying to, like, learn the boss in the time that they have. Same vibes. And Melee's always good, but everyone leaves every testing cycle saying it sucks. Max, do you guys have a sports psychologist for the race? If not, do you see it helping you guys? We had one like a long time ago, like during a complexity race, we had the ability to work with one, but not since then. Honestly, I think the potential value for something like that is pretty high if people like really buy into it. But I think it's one of those things that like all these orgs like to say that they have, but people don't really utilize it right. So it ends up not really serving a big purpose. Everyone always goes into tears saying DH sucks, and I can't remember a time when Havoc was actually beans. Yeah, there's a few reasons for that. One of which is people base their like opinions on if classes are going to be good based on sims or based on like internal guild target dummy tests. And Havoc always overperforms those metrics. The 5-minute single target sim, I probably don't need to explain to you why that's just almost completely useless. But like every single raid fight is a bunch of cleave, and Havoc has historically always had really good burst cleave and really good passive cleave, just in general, compared to other specs. So they always overperform compared to like a single target sim in a raid environment. And then on target dummies, they're just a better class for target dummies, because on target dummies, big fatal flaw of those is that you're standing still. And every class is going to lose a little uptime doing mechanics on fights, but Havoc, like, low-key loses way less uptime than other classes. So they always end up being a progression performer because they don't miss uptime as much. Also, they do better with bosses with big hitboxes rather than, like, target dummies. I'm not feeling this shit. Get out of here. There was only one time Havoc was not brought to the world first race, and it was Nathria 3 years ago. Nathria was 5 years ago? 4 years ago? It was in 2020. I mean, December 2025 is in like, what, 4 months? Something like that? 5 months? So 5 months away from it being 5 years? That's crazy. God, it's been that long. Wait, how long have I been doing this Race World First shit? When was Old Year? 2019? 2018? End of 2018? Oh my God. That's crazy. About to be 7 years. That was the last time I had a real job, too. This job fucking owns. Owns crazy. Why does Max sound like he's huffed helium today? What? Was my voice high? Am I talking higher? I'm thinking about it right now. You never want to be doing that. You never want to be talking and then thinking about talking. That means something's wrong. Blow up? You blow up. Little bitch. You know what I mean? Oh, they're barking. I wonder if that means my Chipotle is here. Every time a food delivery person rings my doorbell, I put another all caps, do not ring doorbell, do not ring doorbell. So my like Uber Eats like tip for the driver is just do not ring doorbell in all caps like 10 times. Every time they ring it, I add another one. All the dogs start barking. It's so bad. How many calories do you eat in a day, by the way? It's changed a little bit. It was like 2,800 a couple months ago, and now I'm at like 3,400. I'm trying to put on a little weight. What's up with the hair, my man? I don't know. I just haven't cut it in a while. What's your height and weight? 6 feet 185 right now. Was like 175 2 months ago. So it's working. But I also play hockey like once or twice a day. So there's just like 1,000 calories right there. That's why the hot number's really high. Max, I've watched a lot of your videos, especially this tier. I understand what makes a raid or encounter bad, but on the contrary, what makes a raid or encounter very good? I don't know. Sometimes it's just good. Like, you could point out, I've heard so many takes about, like, you can't have so many pass-fail mechanics. Or, like, I mean, you mentioned, like, what things makes it bad. Like, anytime you're doing anything involving private auras or pressing macros for weak auras to work, that sucks. Anytime you feel like you're progressing a weak aura, that sucks for sure. But, like, I don't know, what makes fights good? You can have a fight with, like, basically the same mechanics as an amazing fight, and that fight can suck. And it's just by changing the timing on the mechanics just slightly. You know, it's about how it all flows together. It's, like, way too complicated. Honestly, the, like, hitting the perfect spot to make a GOAT boss is crazy, because you've seen so many examples of basically just the smallest thing changing and the boss ends up being terrible. Like Echo of Neltharion is a perfect example of that. That change they made from what a great boss it was on PTR to live, just one small change just made the fight total shit. Bunch of examples of that. It's just really hard to get it exactly right. Do you usually gain or lose weight during races? Oh, I lose a ton of weight. I need to figure out how to not do that, because it always takes me a while to get back in shape again. Part of that's just going to happen. If you take 3 weeks off of playing hockey every day, you're going to go back and feel like shit. That's just how your body works. But and any time I would spend exercising during the race would be a waste of time. I don't know, man. That I always lose tons of weight, but I'm also just like permanently stressed out and like coggy loaded to the max, you know. So that's probably why. You guys don't hire nutritionists to cater to you guys for the race? Nah, I mean, we just have a chef. I hired a nutritionist a couple months ago just for myself. Just like a few little video sessions. I actually learned a lot. It was really interesting. And like came up with a diet for what my lifestyle is. Max, can you explain what made Kill Jaden so difficult? I wasn't following that long ago. I mean, I didn't even... You should probably ask someone who, like, killed that boss world first. I wasn't even competing then. In fact, we were, like, turbo banned in that raid. I think we didn't raid for 18 days. We only got, like, world 11th or something. Max, did you see Scripe's reaction video to your reaction of the Echo roster? No. Scripe did a react of me reacting to him? I feel like I didn't even say anything of value. Like, I basically ended that reaction because someone in stream was like, this would be a good idea. And I'm just like, literally nothing of value was said here. I actually would probably do that if I felt like there was any value to it. But I just don't even feel like I said anything interesting that he would react to. And then I would get another interesting little something to react. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Hey Max, just wondering if you're gonna do another Race to World Last again. It might be my favorite video that you've put out. It's extremely unlikely. Basically, the only time I find that content really fun is when there's stakes, meaning like it's the last night. It has to be the last night, at least for NA, to get cutting edge. The only problem with that is it's the night before our Mythic progression starts. Well, I guess technically splits. You guys probably know by now we don't go into Mythic on day one. But I don't know. We spend that whole week preparing. I'm like at the facility, and part of me just feels wrong. Even if it didn't affect me at all, it just feels wrong the night before the race, like farming content. The last time you saw me do it was at the end of an expansion. And the time before that, it was when there was a Heroic Week. When it's the day before Heroic Tuesday, I don't care. But the day before Mythic, even though Heroic Tuesday and Mythic Tuesday are now kind of the same thing, it just feels weird. Like, I'll tell you what I told you last year. If I'm like super ahead on everything and I feel like I'm just sitting around doing nothing, then I'll do it. But if I feel like I can gain any value in any kind of meeting or looking at something again, I probably won't do that. It depends on the raid. Sometimes I feel really prepared days out, and sometimes I feel like we're learning things as they happen. Like specifically something that makes me unable to do it is usually before the race, the Friday before the raid comes out, there is a tuning, usually a large tuning patch. And then usually there's a smaller one on Monday where they like revert some things they went too far on, or they just do like a baby one. But that baby one can change what we're playing. Right? Like, not even kidding. I'm pretty sure a Monday patch note has happened before, and we've had someone level like 3 or 4 of a class on that Monday to bring in get geared and splits. So like that's usually the main thing we're reacting to at that point, but it is real. But also sometimes that tuning patch doesn't happen. Do you like that Mythic and Heroic are on the same day now? Nah. No, it's I mean it really sucks for the race, but like that's not super relatable. It doesn't apply to everybody. I generally think it's just bad for the entire game. Like I just think what they should do is have Heroic Week with just Heroic and uncapped Mythic Plus. And then it's just Mythic is delayed a week. The only people who are affected by that are people who go into Mythic week 1, which are not a lot of guilds with simultaneous release, honestly. Those are the only people affected in any way by this, and I think most of those people would prefer the week. And not to mention it would give Blizzard an extra chance to tune classes at the beginning of the race or at the beginning of the patch, right? Because they have to send whatever at the beginning of the patch before you see anything. And then they just have to, until the race is over, they can't touch it, right? Which is, if they just did a Heroic Week, they would have 3 or 4 days of everyone in the world doing Heroic raids and Mythic Plus. And you'd have that information to tune before Mythic comes out and before we're like locked into a tuning, you know? And I just think it gives them, not to mention it's going to have them tune the raids better. But again, I don't think that's a everyone problem. That's like a Race to World First problem. Like them tuning it better for the race really only matters for us. And it would be nice for us, right? But like, are you going to tune your raids better with a week of information from Heroic or without that week? And the answer is obviously the first one, right? Heroic Week feels bad for Mythic Plus, though. That's because currently there's no Mythic Plus during Heroic Week, and I've never heard an argument that's made sense as to why that can't be the case. Like, if you're doing Heroic, like, what happens right now is Heroic comes out, Uncapped Mythic Plus comes out, and Mythic comes out. The only thing I'm suggesting that changes is you move Mythic back a week. For most, like 90% of players, that wouldn't even matter anyway. Like, that wouldn't even change anything. Like, I would say most players are only really doing Mythic Plus and Heroic first week. Maybe, like, the first Mythic boss. But that's basically an extension of Heroic, right? Like, it wouldn't affect anyone. I just don't understand why their idea of Heroic Week includes having Mythic Plus not out. It doesn't make any sense to me. Would you do less splits if Heroic and Uncapped had same-day release? No, you'd probably do more, but they would all be during, like, for me, this is my personal opinion. I don't mind doing, actually, to be honest with you, you'd be around the same amount of splits. Because at this point, we're not running into a time issue. We're running into how many characters. Like, basically, it's really hard to explain and show you, but just like the short of it is, like, let's say you have 12 characters. Like, the chance that each individual person has a geared character after all the runs they get is like, it's like 98%. And adding 3 more characters, which is like 3 more splits, is like almost an entire extra day of splits. It goes to like 99% of getting every item you want and having a good character. It's like, its diminishing returns are crazy. So it wouldn't really add too much more characters, but the really nice thing is that you're done with splits before you go into Mythic. Like, what's really nice is you just finish that week. You have the whole week. You don't feel stressed when you're in Heroic. You have like the whole week to do it. And then the next week comes out. Maybe you do like some babby splits, like half a day, but then you're just gaming right away when the content is out. It's so much. The vibes are immaculate. They're so much better. Max, why don't you make any raid guides anymore? I remember the one you did for Denathrius Heroic carried our guild super hard. So I can't explain to you really why I don't do them now. Let me tell you why I did do it then. So then I was playing the game a shit ton. It was also right when my YouTube channel and my Twitch channel were like really popping off. So to be completely honest with you, I was just like more motivated then than I am now. That's true as well. But I think the main thing is I was actually doing Denathrius. It was like a perfect raid leader boss. You as a raid leader could so hard carry Denathrius. Well, to some extent. But like you could have a big impact in phase 3 compared to the way I was seeing it done in pugs. So like if I was doing a pug, I'd be like, dude, the way they're doing this is making it so much harder for themselves. So I made that guide just because I was making a ton of content then, number one. But also because I just felt like the way everyone was doing it normally was just suboptimal, and I felt like me making that video could actually help. So so I have to be playing the game a lot to really care enough to do that, because I'm not going to just make a video to make a video. I'm not like an information YouTuber where you just like come here for raid guides. You can expect raid guides from me. I pretty much only do it when I feel like it'll have a lot of value because either the current guides or what people are doing in pugs is bad. And in some patches, I don't even do a lot of pugs because I'm not playing the game a lot, so I'm obviously not going to make a guide. And I've also played during some seasons where the boss wasn't hard enough to where I felt like a guide from me would actually even help anyone, like Firak is an example. Like I did some undercover raid leadings on Firak, I think, and I was like playing the game a decent amount on Heroic, but the fight just wasn't hard, you know? At least just in terms of like the way that pugs were doing it was like sufficient. It made sense. So that's really the answer, I guess, is I don't know if I feel like I would still make one. Like if I was farming Heroic because I was having a lot of fun playing the game and I was doing undercover stuff and I thought the way that most people would do Heroic was just like bad. It doesn't happen every tier. It's actually, as time has gone on, I think Heroic strats have gotten a little bit better. It's pretty natural, I guess, that would be the case. But yeah, I don't know. It just has to be me playing a lot. Me specifically raiding the end boss a lot, which usually means undercover raid leading, and then the strat that people are using would have to just be really bad for me to make that video. That's why I haven't done it in a while. Max, does Method disband if they don't get at least world second here? No. That does bring up an interesting question for me though, because like it's so interesting to see guilds' actual expectations they set before a tier. So like I know up until this last tier, Method's goal was never even to get world second. Their goal was to just keep getting better. So after raids, when they get third, they're not really mad because their goal wasn't like, hey, we're ready to win, let's win right now. Right? Like when we don't win, we're devastated. When Echo doesn't win, we're devastated. They're devastated, right? Like it's the only thing that matters. But Method doesn't have those, or didn't have those expectations. So that all changed last raid. So last raid, their goal was definitely to win or get second. That was, you could tell through the way that their players talked about it. It was just like they were really hyped after Queen Ansarek. They felt like they were closing the gap and they were ready to like fucking get in there and do some shit. So clearly their expectations changed because they were extremely dobby after the raid. Like it's really easy to have a good outlook on the raid even when you come in third if your goal wasn't higher than that. But when your goal's higher than that and you don't hit it, then it's like naturally you feel like you failed. It feels a lot worse. So I know that after this last raid, it was like really bad because they felt like they closed a gap in Ansarek, and then this tier happened, and they were like farther away than that. They felt like they lost ground rather than gained it. So it's obviously, it sucks, right? And then this raid, or this upcoming raid, it'd be interesting if they didn't pick up all those players, what their expectations would be, because like their expectation, if you say your expectation to like let's win every single tier, but you're realistically not ready to do that, you're just always gonna be fucking depressed, you know? So you have to set realistic expectations. But going into this tier, they have already done the like we need to get second thing at least. But now they recruited those other players. So it'd be interesting to know what their expectations are. Like, are their expectations internally, we are winning the race this year, we are good enough to win, and they genuinely believe it? Which they should, I guess, you know, like you kind of have to. Or do they feel like, let's still keep improving, right? I don't know exactly where their head's at. Obviously, I'm not in the guild. I'm not part of their meetings and stuff. But exactly how they handle those expectations will determine potentially how they perform, but also like how they deal with maybe not winning if that happens, right? So I don't know. I that's actually really interesting. Like I know like BDG went through this exact same thing too. I just remember like the guild came into it with the right mindset. Like we're not really ready to win. Let's just like put ourselves in a position to get better. Let's learn how to do this shit. And then like eventually we'll be good enough to win. And then I remember when they were actually like getting some confidence, and then you lose with that confidence and with the higher expectations. And it's kind of hard to come back from that because you just naturally people start wondering if you're ever able to do it. And if you aren't, why are they spending their time doing this, right? Pieces went through the same thing. And it's not easy. It's not. I've never been in this situation, but like being the third guild in the Race World First is actually so fucking hard because not only do you have to like deal with those expectations every single tier, but you also just historically through this entire race thing, at least of it being streamed, even before that, you're constantly having your best players taken, which is just so hard to get better. Method has at least curbed that for now. Right, where I don't think they're getting like fucking harvested. So maybe that will be the, if anything, a better chance to improve. Max, whenever you don't stream, I lose a day from my lifespan. Please don't. Dude, don't put that on me. What the hell? Why do you think both Laguette and Method were both very interested? Oh, do you mean why do you think both Echo and Method were both very interested in Laguette players? Seems like most of the roster got picked up by them. So there are a bunch of really good players all the time you could potentially recruit for based on need. So when a guild dies that's like pretty good, it's kind of like a mad dash to get the good people before, and those two specifically are like recruiting from the same region, so they both felt like we have to get in there and get as many people as we can that have some kind of experience, you know, if they felt like they needed players. Like I don't know exactly. I think that some of them picked up a lot. Like we usually only pick up like one or two players in between every tier, and it seems like both of them actually picked up like more than like 5 or 6 or 7 or something, like maybe even more than that for Method. So when a guild dies and you're looking to pick up that many players and the guild's like pretty good, you just assume there's going to be some good players in there. Also, they're more likely to join the guild because they can join with friends. Like a lot of people are more likely to join a guild like Echo and Method if they can do it with 2 people they've raided with rather than being like the single new guy. That can just be kind of hard no matter what team you're joining. But yeah, I don't know. Or maybe that guild just had like a ton of fucking insane gamers, and as opposed to normal, they just wouldn't leave until the guild died. They were like super loyal. There's some guilds like that kind of historically that are just like really hard to recruit from because people really like raiding there. I'm not sure if that was the case. I actually know almost nothing about that team. Max, if splits wasn't a thing, how many top guilds would there be, you think? That's interesting. Like over a long period of time, you're basically saying like the barrier to entry is so huge that even if you could assemble a team that's good enough, there's like, can you even fill the amount of splits you would need to do to compete? There's quite a bit more people looking to help for splits than each guild needs. So there'd be room for a few of them. But if you just remove all of that barrier entry, it's so weird because like if you did that right now, nothing would change. But you'd have to assume over years maybe it changes. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think it would change much. I think the main thing... So while the barrier of entry for new guilds to get in sucks for so many reasons that we've talked about a million times, really what's winning this, it's experience for your leadership, but like it's really just like, dude, player skill is so important, and the skill cap and like PvE rating is just infinite. So you can always find someone who's like a little bit better, and the skill level has just gotten so high over the last few years that it would just take a while for any team to even get a roster that could compete really with any top team right now that isn't doing it currently, because it's just been too top loaded for many years. The only guilds with money offering people stuff, and people are going to take that chance to jump forward. If that had not been the case 5 years ago and there was a bunch of guilds with that, maybe it's different, but at least right now it's actually so top loaded talent wise that it would be so hard for that to change. Yo, my food's here. I'm saying be right back. Max, what do you think is the age where people stop being good enough to do the race or having less skill from what you see? I don't think that's a thing, like getting older and your reaction time making you not be able to... I've seen people fall off at this level, and there's one reason for it ever being true, and it's losing your passion. What it takes to be this good enough to do this, when WoW stops being your main passion, almost instantly you're no longer good enough to do this. That's what I've found. I haven't seen someone be like completely passionate in the game and then they just hit a certain age and it's like they're getting passed up. I've never witnessed that. I personally believe that's the case in basically every esport. Like there's a lot of narratives that it's like, oh, in like certain esports you just get to a certain age, your reaction time changes and then you just like can't compete anymore. And I remember speaking to Hiko about this, and he agreed, because I don't know too much about like the FPS scene, a league scene. And he was like, he completely agreed. It's like when you see people fall off, it's just straight up when they lose that passion. And a lot of kids start playing when they're like 18, 17, 15. And then they hit 30 and it's like, bro, I've been playing this game for 15 years and it's just simply not the same. You just don't love it and care about it as much as you used to. I would say that is what makes anyone fall off in this, rather than anything else. Faker disproved that. Well, if you notice, I didn't say what happens to everyone. I said what commonly happens to people. I mean, Faker's the fucking GOAT, right? So kind of a specific example, but you could be a player that never loses that love and actually you just love gaming and permanently forever you just only care about this, right? But those people are very rare. Like humans just move on after a certain amount of time, you know? When's that passion fading for you, Max? Honestly, that passion might have faded for me by now if I had kept playing, because I was really not a fan of like the infinite characters island grind. Like I was getting to the point where those grinds were like, I don't really want to do this. So naturally kind of worked out where I moved on to something else. But like right now, I fucking love what I do. I have infinite. Every time a new testing cycle comes out, I'm just so fucking locked in. Like I care so much. I don't know, but I also have it pretty easy because I can take off a good bit of farm when I'm no longer needed, which allows me to come back and feel refreshed. Like, bro, if I had to 21st man raid lead all of our farm clears every week, I would have quit. I would have been the fuck out of here. Like, there's no way. It's actually miserable. I can't do it. But like basically being able to show up for the testing cycle and all through progression and the few weeks of farm or month of farm after it, I'm like, it's like my favorite thing ever. I can't imagine myself ever getting tired of it. Not to mention the like camaraderie with your teammates and stuff like that. Like, you can't get that a lot of other places. So it's really, really cool. I mean, you would still do it for the money, I guess. Nah. No. I don't like you're saying in that scenario I'm actually over it. I'm not passionate about this anymore, but I can still cash a paycheck every race. I would quit so fast if that's ever how I felt. Because number one, that would mean if I ever felt that way about this, I would be fucking terrible at my job. And then I would be letting a bunch of people down. I can't do that. Like the second I lose passion about this at all and I don't want to do this anymore, I have to quit because it's not fair to any of them that I would continue doing that. I think that's true for everyone as well. You just can't do that. Can't wait for the Celtic Shack era. Dude, did I bring my food in here? Oh yeah, I did. What's for dinner? Just a little Chipotle. Max, do you cook sometimes? Yeah. I mean, if you consider me ordering food cooking, then yes. Because it's the same thing, right? Like, going to your kitchen and, like, cooking food natty, and then food appears in front of you. But I, like, go on my phone and I click a button and food appears. It's the same process. You know what I mean? Just my ingredients are dollars, but still food comes out. All right. So, we're going to look at these notes, and I'm going to yap, because, god damn it, that's what I do. But, I have to eat my food first, which means we kind of have to react to something. Or at least have something playing in the background for that value. Max, have you ever gotten the Chipotle secret hacks from Dr. Atnos? I mean, we have our own secret hack. Like, what I used to do, I don't do this anymore. I don't really know why. I just don't really care enough. What you used to do is you go to Chipotle, you'd ask for an extra, you get a bowl, and you'd ask for a tortilla on the side. The logic there is you just get usually more food with a bowl than you do in a burrito because they don't have to worry about wrapping it. So you ask for a bowl, you ask for double rice, double beans. They don't charge you for that. And then you ask for half chicken, half steak. Because naturally, I don't know if they fix this, but the employees will usually give you like more than a half portion of each meat. So you end up with like 25% or 50% more. And then you wait until they do half chicken, half steak, and then you say double meat. Logic there is, if you say, I want one serving of chicken and one serving of steak, they're just going to give you one of each. But if you say, I want half and half, they'll give you like 25% more. And then if you say double meat after that, then they know that you just saw how much they gave you for the first portion. So they end up giving you like almost triple meat total for the cost of just double. Big value. And then you just get as much toppings as you want. And usually what you can do after that is like make your own burrito at the table, with what they gave you, and you still have like almost a full bowl left, and you end up only paying for basically just the extra tortilla, and you get like 2 full meals. I've told this story before, but it's been years. We did this. So back when we first made Limit, we had like a gamer house. I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and I had like a somewhat good job. So like a few people that have basically never had jobs before, one of them did. They like moved in with me, and we had like 5 dudes living in like a fucking gamer house in Wisconsin. That was very fun. Malakrin, Zyronic, Soy, and Snarf lived with me. And we hit it. We talked about that Chipotle trick, and then we all went to the same Chipotle, like as a group. Like we just drove there and went to Chipotle, and we were all trying to run the same move on this Chipotle worker, right? So like by the like 3rd or 4th person, you would say, I want half chicken, half steak. And he's like, do you want double meat? And it's like, nah, half chicken, half steak. This is Ironic did this, by the way. 3 people already did this. And then the 4th person just said, Zyronic said, I want half chicken, half steak. And the guy asked, do you want double meat? I'm asking you now. And then he said no. And then he does half chicken, half steak. And then he asks him for double meat after that. And I was going last. And I didn't have the balls to do it because I was just like, dude, this guy's probably about to quit his job like right now. And I want nothing to do with this. I'll take just the burrito, man. There's no way I'm doing this right now. This guy will hate me for the rest of his life. All right. So, here we go. The War Within Doom of Koresh Chapter 3. Wait, so like there's like a World of Warcraft video. Wait, what is this?
Blizzard Entertainment presents The Doom of Koresh by Adam Christopher. Prequel.
It's an audio story. Oh, okay, we can get the fuck out of here. Sorry. Okay. Well, what do we listen to? Is there like some dev speaking? Maybe, dude. Stuff's been announced today. Does Dratnos have a video yet? Oh yeah, 18 minutes ago, Monk Buff patched.
Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos.
No, but I'm gonna do my own little react to that. No. Fuck. Oh wait, we can do that Hirumared video. I've been keeping one on the back burner. Hirumared does not look awesome. It's like top 10 abilities that can never return is the title of the video. So I guess we could cook real quick on what we think those would be. He has sections here, so I'm going to be really careful not to actually go over it. But what do you guys think? If anything pop in the top of your head about top 10 abilities that can never return? Like, first one is like Symbiosis for sure. It's just simply too overpowered. Surrender to Madness. I hate that that's correct, but I think you're right. Because I think there should be room in the game for that. Rest in peace, Breath dying last week. Spirit Shell? Ooh, fucking facts. So true, actually. You guys are actually cooking right now. You guys are hard cooking. Aspect of the Fox? No, Aspect of the Fox could absolutely come back. I don't know why they removed it. They removed it because it was really, really good for one raid fight. Like, Aspect of the Fox is one of the most historically overrated buttons ever, basically because they removed it and because of Blackhand. You could have had Aspect of the Fox in the game since then, and, like, nothing would have changed. Ashen Hollow? I mean, we need to get moving here, so I'll throw it in. But I mean, Ashen Hollow should be able to exist, right? Like, the only issue with Ashen Hollow, the only one, is that they made a 4-minute cooldown in the game that actually made sense for it being 4 minutes. Like, the only kind of 4-minute cooldown around then was like meta, like real CD, like it was intended to be their real cooldown. But it wasn't actually a 4-minute cooldown. It was like a 2-minute cooldown that just had a longer cooldown for some reason. Like, for a 4-minute cooldown to exist, it should be twice as strong as a 2-minute cooldown. which is crazy because some 2-minute cooldowns are fucking nuts. And Ashen Hollow was correctly powered. It was just really OP because they made a 4-minute cooldown as powerful as it should be, but it turns out one single thing being that powerful, you can like plan around and have it be the thing you're playing around, and it's just too good, right? It's too good at what it's doing. That was the only reason. So like I don't think the only reason it couldn't come back is maybe it's true that just having a extremely powerful button ever and a cooldown that is associated with it that makes sense because it is that powerful is just maybe it just doesn't work in WoW. It's just too OP. Max, we have seen this video already, I feel. We have definitely not reacted to this video, I'm positive. Old DK battle res where it turned them into a ghoul. Nah, that was overrated. Fuck. Okay. We're running out of like actual good ones here. Does anyone have any actual good ones? Divine Intervention is whatever. Mana Burn. A-Bomb's Limb. I guess, okay, this is not going to include that though because this video was made before they removed A-Bomb's Limb or right around then. Kill Jaden's Cunning or Dark Intent for Warlocks. They could absolutely bring back a nerfed version of Kill Jaden's Cunning for Warlocks. They could probably use it. Old Alter Time Gladiator Stance. Gladiator Stance was super mid in PvE. Burst of Speed. Ooh, I like that. That's good. I like that. You're getting deja vu? I wonder why you're getting deja vu. Like here. Maybe there's been one like it was like best abilities ever or something. I remember this. Like most OP abilities ever, and we ended up listing like if you think about it, a video with the top 10 most like OP abilities, isn't that going to be almost the same thing as abilities that can never return? I think that's why you're getting... I'm positive that we have not looked at this. It came out 10 days ago. I've only streamed like 2 times in the last 10 days. And I have absolutely not looked at this. So it's probably just something similar.
Throughout the history.
What if they're super problematic buttons or dog shit buttons? I guess. Give me a vibe here. It was a Wii video. I don't know who that is. Some of these guesses are making it extremely obvious. I don't know. I don't have anything else that actually makes sense here. I'm seeing you guys type all this stuff. I just don't think they were actually that OP. Like, I'm thinking in my head when you type these words, and I'm like, is that's in the game right now? The title of this is Can Never Return to WoW. I'm just reading what you guys are saying, and I'm like, they could return to WoW, and it'd be fine. Right? Now, do we want to do this like what he would say? Because I think he's going to say Divine Intervention, but like Divine Intervention just doesn't matter. I don't know why this is like hyped up as some crazy ability. It's whatever. Fairy Fire. Ooh, that's a deep cut. Doesn't return mean OP though? Yeah. I guess, kind of, right? I guess it could mean it can't return because it never worked. I don't know, bro. Let's just watch the video. I gotta eat this burrito so we can actually look at the changes today.
World of Warcraft's 20 plus years, there have been many abilities that have come and gone. Some that are kind of boring, some that don't make sense, and others that just flat out suck. However, in today's list, we're going to be discussing some of the best WoW abilities that cannot be brought back into the modern game. This ultimately boils down to balance and issues, so let's discuss the top offenders of this category. And starting us off at number 10, we have the Skull Banner. Introduced...
Bro, Skull Banner could exist right now on Warriors, and nothing in the game would change. This ability was like okay. It was never you had to bring enough of them. Rallying Cry, until it was nerfed last expansion, has always been better than Skull Banner.
In the Mist of Pandaria expansion, this ability was granted to warriors.
Like this could just totally exist, and
it
would
was
be fine.
automatically given at level 87 and had a 3-minute cooldown. Suffice to say, the cooldown wasn't what made this ability so nice. Essentially, what it does is when clicked, it would throw down a banner in a similar way to a shaman placing their totems. Once planted, it would grant all allies within 40 yards a whopping 20% additional critical strike for 10 whole seconds. As an added bonus, warriors could also intervene.
It was not critical strike, right? It was critical strike damage. I think that's big difference.
Towards it, making them get a small burst of extra mobility if they knew where it was. But this was incredibly niche for the time. This strength obviously comes from being able to give the entire raid 20% more crits for damage and healing for 10 seconds, which when lined up can be pretty spectacular. It made warriors much more welcomed in hardcore raid environments because they brought one of the strongest external buttons for the time. It wasn't uncommon to see multiple warriors chaining this ability during a raid's burst window to really help melt a boss. Pairing it with things like Bloodlust and just executing an order of warriors to press Skull Banner meant you had a lot more haste and crit on top of it. The only difference is that Skull Banner could be used multiple times in a fight, unlike Bloodlust. Unless you were fighting something like the Shah of Fear for 20 minutes. Unfortunately for warrior players, this button saw its doom in the very next expansion, along with many other classes after the overpowered
because
factors
people
in
weren't taking it, by the way.
For the time, it also wasn't even buffed or nerfed. It just stayed like that for all of Myths because almost every spec was really good. A common expansion we'll hear about when it comes to entries on this list. It wasn't super insane to see something like this for the time. But nowadays, if a warrior could grant the group 20% more crit for 10 seconds, it would be game-changing for raids and dungeons to come.
I mean, could this... Okay, an ability like this existing in retail would probably flood warriors into Mythic PvE. Not true. But if there was like a specific class that had perma crit, thinking like Fire Mage, and like they were what you were stacking, like then Skull Banner would have value. Could I see you bringing an extra warrior than you would already want to based on their tuning? Because of this? Yes. But I would think that's very similar to like Rallying Cry. Were there times before they nerfed Rally that we brought an extra warrior to a raid because we wanted another Rally? Yes. I think Skull Banner would have been absolutely the same based on what happened to be good at that time, right? Especially like crit scaling specs. But here's the thing. This isn't things that would come back and make them better. This would, I mean, it's just an extra thing. It would obviously make them better. It's things that can't return to WoW. This would be like totally fine if it came back.
Actually almost resurfaced in the Dragonflight expansion, briefly being added into the beta of the expansion before being
I forgot about that. That's true, isn't it? I think I do remember randomly Skull Banner being like, I remember reading that within the last couple of years.
A few builds later. And at number 9, we have Ashen Hollow. So, during the
Shadowlands we typed this one.
Players were given a choice between 4...
I wonder what his view is going to be, because I don't think Ashen Hollow was like... I don't think it was better than its cooldown. It was just having an actually properly attributed 4-minute cooldown being as powerful as it should be to make up for it being that long is just simply too good. And that's never happened before. And they did it one time, and then it was just too good. I mean, I think you could even argue Ashen Hollow wasn't that OP, because it was like half and half, like people were Kyrian, because Divine Toll was like really competitive in like a much different kind of way, which I also thought was really cool that they had two choices that played so differently that were both strong. Yeah, I don't know. It makes me think it wasn't that good because people still played Kyrian.
Different covenants that would grant them a class-specific spell alongside a general one that everyone got. Very oftentimes, the class-specific choice is why people would go to a certain covenant. And for paladins, it was often quite a toss-up between Kyrian or the star of this entry, Venthyr. To sum it up, Ashen Hollow was a generic red circle that paladins could place at a select location.
When was Ashen Hollow the most OP? Like, you used it in Castle Nathria, you had 2 Holy Paladins. You used it in Sanctum of Domination, and you had 2 Holy Paladins as well. And then they either nerfed it, and I don't think you played 2 Holy Paladins for Jailer tier. And then in Mythic Plus, it was like really prevalent. Right? I think it's probably Mythic Plus because you could have done the raid without Ashen, but I think Mythic Plus, like Ashen Hollow, enabled pulls to work at all.
Location, which would persist for 30 seconds on a 4-minute cooldown. You could mess up where you meant to place it, and it was probably fine because your tank could easily just move mobs over into the cast zone for you. Think of it like a consecration, but way, way better. It would deal very heavy amounts of DPS and healing to anyone in any...
What is it? Sylvanas platform last phase was OP as fuck. Well, the problem is there was 4 Sylvanas platforms and you had to pick one. Like, for example, I don't know how much better Venthyr was than Kyrian for that, at least for healing in that phase, because you would just have something on every platform, and there's usually a hard lineup on every platform rather than Turbo running one. I mean, that tier was weird because at least at the highest level, you played double Disc Priest, double Holy Paladin, so you didn't really care. The discs were rotating often enough that you could just use Ashen Hollow to carry a long period of time, and you didn't need that constant healing. That was actually the weirdest healer comp ever. We haven't done that in a long time, but there was basically no rot healer. You had 4 healers that were entirely defined by their ramp windows or their Ashen windows, and you just like somehow just cycled all 4 of them and made it work. Truly weird shit.
anything that stood in it, while simultaneously allowing paladins to free cast their Hammer of Wrath ability. Now, paladins are a sort of combo generator type class, the fact that they generate combo points with weaker abilities to spend them on much harder hitting abilities. Hammer of Wrath is specifically designed for all paladin specs to be cast during the execute phase of a mob or boss, meaning it does a little bit of both worlds here. Good damage and generates the holy power to spend on better abilities. When you combo this with the high damage throughput of the Ashen Hollow itself, and the ability to essentially press a smaller execute at any percent of HP on a mob, you had paladins going bonkers on bosses and AoE packs alike. The real holy shocker of this combination were holy paladins and not the tanker DPS specs actually. See, when we say the damage Ashen Hollow could provide was a lot, we mean there were MDI runs with holy paladins bursting on dungeon bosses.
I mean, prop paladin Ashen was definitely good.
Doing more DPS than not just their tank, but all 3 of their DPS at once. For a
That's actually fucking crazy. Has that happened since? Has there been a healer spec that has topped a pull since Ashen Hollow at Holy Paladin? I don't think so.
Considerable amount of time. The best part is that they're still doing a ton of healing to your group. They were everything you'd want at once when Ashen Hollow was active. That's not even to say that protection and retribution were bad with this ability even. It's
maybe
just
some mind
always
control
seemed to
stuff
gain the
from
most
Priest,
value
but
out of this ability than them. And it makes sense too. Adding
Vesper
a button
Totem
on a
Shaman?
4-minute
Oh, that's a good
cooldown
point.
Means that it just has to be twice
I don't think
as
it's quite
as
good
a
enough,
regular
but it's a
2-minute cooldown.
good shout.
Otherwise, Ashen Hollow would
Dude,
just
give
suck.
seed.
Even Army of the Dead for Unholy DKs in recent WoW history is generally a 3-minute cooldown. But Ashen Hollow was even longer. It probably was one of the strongest buttons a single class had that wasn't something like an external like Castle Nathra.
Ashen Hollow is a single class, but I'm pretty sure Ashen Hollow was the single best button in the game since Surrender to Madness. Just in general, like most impactful single ability.
Anti-magic zone. It founded some of the highest playtime in Holy Paladins in recent years, and it's a shame to see it gone, at least visually. But it makes sense why it had to stay in the Shadowlands. This thing did way too much, and the only way to really tune it was to lower its cooldown and numbers, but then you take away the fantasy of just being super OP every 4 minutes. At least a future glyph to make Consecration look like Ashen Hollow would be nice in the future. And at number 8, we have Spirit Shell.
Yo! We did it again! Okay, we got 2 of the 3. And the one that he put at number 10, Skull Banner, is some Mickey Mouse shit. Although some people in chat did type that, but you're all wrong. So, yeah, Spirit Shell's kind of self-explanatory. If you guys ever healed with a good Disc Priest using Spirit Shell, that had to be the least fun you've ever had playing this game. Like, you just don't know when to press your healing cooldowns because, like, just damage just wouldn't happen, you know? Super, super frustrating. You just basically didn't play the game.
Back to some Mist of
especially in
Pandaria
farm.
buttons. Spirit Shell would be granted a Discipline Priest.
Maybe if you okay, that's just more of an annoying thing. But if you talk about why it can never return, the answer is like Blizzard, especially early in progression, often creates things that you have to like use cooldowns to live, like rally, personals, whatever. Spirit Shell just happened too often. It would make it so you could just have a pre-absorb on everyone and just basically completely mitigate fight mechanics. And I imagine if you're a Blizzard fight developer, this is just, you just couldn't create, you know what I'm saying? Like this would be so OP that they would have to find other ways to challenge you. And you guys have seen how that's gone, right? Like the whole week aura thing. Like it becomes an arms race against Spirit Shell. How can we make the raid feel in danger with Spirit Shell, and then things just get extra spiky? And, you know, it just had to be gone.
It would cause your main healing spells to no longer heal, but instead create an absorption shield on your target for 15 seconds. The Spirit Shell aura would last 10 seconds on the priest on a 1-minute cooldown. For the time in MoP, this was greatly useful to prepare for incoming damage variables. When you would become familiar with the fight, you could instead press this button and start healing everyone early, thus stopping the damage from ever really occurring in the first place. Plus, the shields granted could be pretty huge.
What are you saying? This dude is such a classic indie content creator. He's having to explain holy power to his audience. Pally's had holy power since Kata. Yeah, but like, who cares? He's just like making content that we're reacting to. Why are you so full of hate, you know? Why are you mad right now?
Times nearly your entire
At least your
bar.
Twitch name
this
is
made living certain mechanics far easier, as being able to straight up prevent the damage
he's just saying shit
is
on the
far
internet,
more
man.
valuable than just healing it back off, especially in the modern day, as sometimes you might just get one shot and then there's nothing to heal. Eventually, the ability was removed from the Disc Priest in Legion, but was later reintroduced in the Shadowlands expansion, where Disc had undergone some pretty hefty class changes since MoP. If you're slightly unfamiliar with how Disc Priest works, its main method of healing... This. And at number 7, we have Dark Simulacrum. Now, before we get into this,
So a lot of people posted this. I just
do understand
don't really
this ability
agree.
Does still exist in the modern game, but only...
Yeah, but only in PvP. So in PvE, I can only think of one boss that was completely trivialized by the existence of Dark Sim. Like, maybe this is a PvP argument, actually. But if it's a PvP argument... Doesn't it exist in PvP? Because, like, do you guys remember the boss? This is actually a deep cut. Does anyone remember the last boss that Dark Simulacrum trivialized in World of Warcraft? I think people will probably get it. Sinestra? No, way after Sinestra. I'll give you a hint. It was in Warlords of Draenor. It was in Hellfire Citadel. Yep, it was in Hellfire Citadel. You're narrowing it down. Wasn't it Iskar? It was not Iskar, but it was very, very close to when you fought Iskar. Like right around there. Socrathar, yeah, someone got it. Yeah, you could just absolutely cheese the fuck out of Socrathar. I think we killed that boss in like 5 pulls. Just having a DK Dark Sim the boss to death. It was so broken. But here's why I think this could come back. I'm interested to hear his argument here. Again, this is just totally assuming that this is not including PvP. This ability could totally come back in PvE because they could just make bosses not work with this, and then it's just not something that matters. Like, for example, I can only think of 2 bosses in 15 years of this game where Dark Sim had an impact. So they could just simply make that not true. And then it's just, it can be back because who cares, right? It just didn't matter at any other point, so.
As a PvP talent for Death Knights. In this entry,
like most Dark Sim uses are like you use it in a dungeon on some random caster mob and it has like some kind of cool CC effect or something, but it was like very, very rarely in modern WoW before they removed it. Like, this is totally broken thing, even in dungeons. There's some challenge mode stuff really early, but not a lot.
Specifically talking about the usage of this button in PvE settings in the
Max, you look sick. Are you okay? Oh, thanks, dude.
past, and why it hasn't been usable in PvE since. Introducing Cataclysm for all Death Knights, this button would essentially become the spell reflection warriors have, but on steroids. It would cost 20 runic power on a 1-minute cooldown. When pressed, it would essentially curse the target and cause their next spell that costs mana to then be transferred to the DK who cast it, and allow them to cast an exact duplicate of the spell back at them. Now, the craziness of this ability is as it sounds. Like when a Frostbolt was cast on you as a DK, you had applied Dark Simulacrum, you could then gain Frostbolt and use it back on them. This applied for naturally every single class in the game, and a very well-timed placement of, we'll call it DS for short, spelled a very different PvP environment. But this still exists in PvP.
Yeah.
So the real kicker for the PvE side of things is the exact duplication portion of the tooltip, which continues to apply when in dungeons and even raid environments. This would allow the Death Knight to have a well-timed DS on a boss and be able to steal their exact ability and then cast it back at them. The only
99% of those were like cool flavor things that didn't do any damage.
tricky thing is that if Spell Reflect couldn't reflect the spell, you very likely couldn't steal it. A big difference, however, is that Spell Reflection places a buff on the warrior themselves for a very limited time. If the Death Knight times the DS well and captures the ability from the mob, they can then hold onto it for an exact moment that they deemed necessary to use. Even in Mists of Pandaria, the spell was heightened to then include all spells in the game.
You know, I'm going to let him have it. I mean, if you're going to use the argument of like, I used one earlier for Spirit Shell, right? Where I said that fight designers are like constantly terrified of Spirit Shell causing issues and they have to create annoying problems for you to solve because of its existence. You could just say Dark Sim's the same thing. Like it just almost never actually was a problem, but it was sometimes, and maybe that means it can't be in the game.
So a
for
DK
PvE.
could
Okay.
just become
I'm cool with it.
anything or anyone for a very small moment if they play decently. In Modern Mythic Plus, something this unique could be very route defining if it allowed the group to...
Yeah, but like, okay, my opinion, I think this working and being really good in like one random Mythic Plus dungeon a season or like every other season or something would be totally fine, right? I'm cool with that. Like, hey, you're not playing a DK right now, like you don't most seasons. But it's like a DK in this specific dungeon is kind of nice. Like, one thing that I wish was true about Mythic Plus, don't take my opinion with a grain of salt. I barely do Mythic Plus. I'm not speaking for everyone here. I'm speaking for me. I think it'd be cool if like the best comp, there was never one best comp for all 8 dungeons. There was just like, and you could do this through tuning, you could do this through what the dungeon is asking of you, but like if you look at 8 dungeons, there should be like at least 3 dungeons where, I guess the number doesn't matter, but it would just be cool if like there's certain dungeons that are just way better for these specs than others, rather than just one. But I could see how like people would hate that because like you just want to main one character and only play that character. But I feel like it would help with variety a lot.
possibly skip packs.
Like they kind of get close to that with, I mean, right now this season there's like a physical comp that is like enabled because of physical based raid buffs, which I find really cool. That's kind of topical for today because they buffed the monk buff, and we're gonna look at that after this. But it's really rare for that to exist. It's more like target cap versus non-target cap. Like if you make a dungeon like Theater of Pain, like random classes that are actually really good but don't have uncapped AoE are just randomly a lot better. Just stuff like that. But then the issue with that is Mythic Plusers just want to mass AoE everything, so then they're just going to hate that dungeon.
Kill them quicker, or be able to play safer because of some sort of CC gain. The possibilities are quite limitless. DKs already are a popular dungeon class amongst the WoW community for their insanely high AoE profiles, so to also provide them with a button that steals abilities would be intense. But then again, people have been asking for a raid DK buff. And at number 6, we have Alter Time.
So true.
Specifically, its earliest iteration in Mists of Pandaria.
Oh, okay.
Granted to mages of all...
This is kind of a good cook, actually. Like, I didn't think of this because the ability just is still in the game. But Old Alter Time used to snapshot all of your buffs. So Lust, your main cooldowns. So you got to extend your like damage window with Alter Time, which was really sick.
Backs at level 87,
But
this
very
ability
good.
would essentially allow the mage to transport themselves back in time after a brief period of pressing it. It had a 3-minute cooldown, and while in modern WoW, it is mostly used...
I don't know. I mean, if this still existed, they would just tune them around that. It could still exist, right? It'd probably be hard to balance. It would probably just have so much power in this specifically, and it'd be hard for them to guess how much power because of all the new effects every tier and stuff. So maybe similar to the other things, it's just like so complicated that you just have to get rid of it.
Defensive tool. During mob, it was very crucial to rotate it correctly for your burst window as a mage. If you're unfamiliar with the current version of Alter Time, it basically lets a mage play the health you were at when initially
You
pressed.
think it increases the skill gap, but the balance will be insane? Does it really? I mean, it really wasn't hard to play with. I actually played a lot of mage in challenge modes back then. It's kind of just you use it the same way every time. You just get all your buffs up and you just alter time at some point during it, let it run its full duration. You just get 10 seconds of free buffs, you know?
So if you press Alter Time again, or 6 seconds had elapsed, you would not only return to the spot you had pressed it at, but you would also return to your previous health value. This is how it's
Do you
primarily
mean you used to pilot a lot of mages in challenge modes? You're absolutely goddamn right. Although I did actually play my mage in challenge modes sometimes when I wasn't piloting them, because it was also just like a really fucking good challenge mode carry class. Specifically, there's a couple of alter times you would use to like get to deal with like dungeon mechanics, like Scholomance, is that the one?
This is a defensive tool, as you could save your health in one location, take a bit of damage you may have expected, and immediately regain it by essentially warping time backwards for yourself. However, the first version of this ability didn't only freeze your health, it also froze your mana.
Yeah,
buff.
let's skip this.
And at
I'm almost done with my
number 5,
burrito.
We have our first monk ability, Dematerialize, introduced with the...
Wait, what? When you are stunned, you phase out of existence temporarily, causing all melee ranged spell attacks to miss you for... Is this a PvP thing?
brand new monk class of Mist of Pandaria. This ability comes more as
Wow, that does sound OP. Holy fuck. You're basically immune to stuns. Like, you can be stunned, but never killed through
a
one.
passive effect for monks rather than a button you actually press. The only caveat to this is that it requires you to be in Serpent Stance, a stance only available to the healer spec of monks, Mistweaver. What this does is, when you are stunned by any source ever, so long as it's considered a stun and not something like a fear, the Mistweaver will then essentially become immune to all melee, range, and spell attacks for 2.5 seconds. Generally, a stun can last just as long as these 2.5 seconds unless it's a full kidney shot from a rogue, just for example. That means almost any time a Mistweaver is stunned, they're actually completely safe from danger and don't run the risk of losing too much health, or even having to commit resources to themselves shortly after the stun ends to stay alive. Once this happens, the Mistweaver then incurs a 10-second cooldown on Dematerialize, but that doesn't actually stop this ability from being good. See, most abilities that stun in WoW have a much longer cooldown than just 10 seconds, meaning that by the time you try again, the monk will be ready for it and not actually have to do anything to beat the stun setup. This is mostly an issue in PvP for people that played against Mistweavers, and it made setups to a kill target in arenas, or killing the monks specifically, much harder because they would basically be immune for at least half of their stun or longer. You could of course chain stun the monk, but this naturally, any sort of encounter a mob that could stun the Mistweaver had the same effect, and aided them in defensiveness very greatly, which is what lands in Cataclysm. And at number 4, we have Smoke Bomb, introduced to rogues.
So my usage of Smoke Bomb in raids was just a DR cooldown. Like, I mean, it's like literally it was AMZ, right, on a longer cooldown. Actually, really similar to current AMZ. I don't remember exactly what DR it was, but it was like, I think almost exactly what current AMZ is, except it was all damage. The argument he's probably going to make is every now and then, very similar to Spirit Shell, very similar to Dark Simulacrum, just like 1 in 15 raid bosses would have some weird shit where if you smoke bombed at the right time, the boss couldn't target anyone because they were all in a smoke bomb, or it targeted the one person outside of it, and you can kind of cheese bosses. But again, very rare.
In Cataclysm,
but it
this
did
ability
happen.
does exactly what it sounds like. When pressed, the rogue would drop a cloud of smoke at its feet for 5 seconds, smothering them from enemies outside its radius. This made the rogue themselves and allies unable to be targeted by any enemies outside the cloud, forcing either an enemy player or an NPC to have to move into the cloud if they wish to attack. This, of course, created very dynamic
we're gonna
play
skip this.
styles,
Almost
which
done.
allowed. This is a very recent occurrence in WoW history, and had only served a
Wait,
very
this is actually a really good fucking point. I didn't know he was going to cook like this. This is so
brief
true.
period of time during the Dragonflight expansion. When it comes to things
This was like recent history, but yeah, I mean, like when Vengeance Demon Hunter had 2 of each sigil, bro, could you imagine that now too? Like in this expansion, where Silent Sigil and Moonkin Beam are so OP because they make things just chain cast if you stop them during their important ability. Like, this would do double. Oh my god, this would be so fucking good. And I'm pretty sure the meta would have just been like DH forever if they hadn't have changed this. This is actually, I'm surprised this isn't number one.
Like,
I'm interested to see what more. I mean, what other two do we have here? So, if the actually our Surrender to Madness and Symbiosis probably both more problematic than this, maybe.
You'll typically see them all relatively close to one another in terms of balancing. The determining factors usually come down to things like their DPS, how tanky they are, and obviously how fun they can be. There's always going to be a meta pick for players when pushing the hardest content possible. But typically, this meta pick is
why is he showing Mage Tower footage
bit ahead of the others. This isn't always the case, however, as the greatest offender of this is the Vengeance Demon Hunter during Seasons 3 and 4 of Dragonflight. To be honest, a partial point in what made this talent so good was also attributed to their tier sets at the time, but more on that later, as it's not the truly meta-defining part.
This would have been broken in every season.
If you're not super familiar with Vengeance Demon Hunters, they can operate a group of abilities called sigils that they can place on the ground. Sigil of Chains group gonna be here, but it'd be and reduce the
Okay, he got the chapters wrong. Sorry. Okay.
2, we have Surrender to Madness.
Dude, we got it right though.
The uninitiated, Shadow Priest was reworked during the Legion expansion to play around.
Wait, did all of the we didn't list 10, but did all of them get picked? Oh no, they didn't pick Burst of Speed. That's probably fair.
A new resource called Insanity. A group of spells would be used to generate insanity for the priest, and then spent upon reaching maximum insanity. At the same time, you'd be great.
I really hate that this can't come back to the game. Because I really wish there was room in this game for Rep Paladin and BM Hunter, and there's a ton of other specs that I usually single those out, that are like intended to be easier to play, even though they're still fun. But on the other side of it, there should be extremely hard to master stuff that really asks a lot of you, that's really rewarding if you get good at it, right? So a bunch of things like that in WoW's history, but Surrender to Madness is probably one of them. Like, if you knew anyone that was good at Surrender to Madness, this was like the most fun they ever had playing this game. So I hate that it can't come back, but the reason it probably can't come back is because when you make something truly that difficult and properly rewards you for how hard and punishing it is, it's just too OP, and kind of similar to the Ashen Hollow thing, you just build everything around it because it exists, right? So basically any hard execute phase that ever existed in WoW, it would just be trivialized by good Surrender to Madness Priest. And that also runs into what Blizzard kind of hates. You've seen this with a lot of recent changes. They're trying to reduce the delta between the average player and the best player. Like, they want there to be mastery, but they don't want you to just get completely fucking shit on by someone better than you in most specs. And I believe that's why they got rid of this. It's just sad though. I wish stuff like this could exist, but I understand it's just too good.
Ability
because if they made it less powerful, then it just doesn't make sense. Then, I mean, they changed Surrender a lot before they removed it. But like, if you make it less powerful to where it's not too OP, it doesn't actually make up for the punishing. Like, the reward isn't worth the potential punish.
Essentially replace their infamous shadow form called Void Form. Think of it like Shadow Form, but on limited steroids. But also, they still had Shadow Form too. You're given stronger abilities and damage at the cost of Void Form being extremely limited. And if you ran out of Insanity, you would revert back to Shadow Form. Void Form would be constantly ticking away in duration and progressively get harder and harder to continue generating Insanity to stay in it, eventually ticking down on its own no matter what you did to try to stay in. And the longer you stayed in the form, the more your damage got bigger and bigger. However, with the introduction of Surrender to Madness, this would cause all of your insanity generating abilities to then give you 200% more insanity instead of the usual amount. We all probably knew this was going to be here, but it'd be impossible to make a list like this without having it at the top or at least mentioning it. Symbiosis.
I feel good having Surrendered and Symbiosis in the top two.
Allowed a player to link themselves with a targeted ally of their choosing.
Super broken. I'll just leave the thing on the screen. I'm sure he's going to show it. Oh, he's not. There's like a chart you can see for everyone's class. But yeah, you could like, as a druid, you could get like Ice Block or Deterrence, which is now Turtle, or you could get Divine Shield from Paladins. You could get Soul Swap. You could get kicks. You could get CC abilities, and that's just half of it. Every single time you did that, you also gave them something. You gave tanks an extra defensive. I mean, it was just the most most absurdly broken ability of all time. Anyways, that's all we have for that. Okay, so back to the real content. I'm done with my burrito. I've been eating. Wowhead. What did we get? Okay, there was a new post today. We have not read it yet, but we've heard the streets talking about it. Ooh, Blizzard responds to spell block removal for Prot Warrior. Well, they already responded. Are they responding to the feedback about their response? Okay, let's see. So basically, Warriors are like, okay, we're just turbo dead because we lose this tool now. And the reason they removed it, according to them, wasn't it something like it's not... Basically, it was too hard to use right, and the game doesn't tell you when the right time is to use it to be super OP, and we'd rather things be more like clear in the game as to when a button like this is good. It was just basically too complicated. But meanwhile, Warriors are like, yeah, but we're just dead now. So we hear your concerns about losing spell block as a defensive tool. It is super important to us that Warriors have sufficient tools to survive magic, tank busters, and raids and high keys. We are coordinating to review magic attacks in light of spell blocks removal to ensure they're fair, including specific abilities you've raised concerns with on here and other channels. Feedback about your experiences of specific magic attacks will be very valuable. So this reads to me like the death grip thing. Like my biggest issue with them really, really doubling down on a grip being a raid buff is they're saying like, hey, don't worry about mass grip. We're going to make single grips important. And don't worry, like we're just going to keep doing that. Now I trust that they're going to do that for this tier because it already seems like they have, and maybe even in the near future, they'll do it. But at some point, you're just going to lose sight of that, and you're going to run into the same problem you run into now, most likely. This is kind of the same thing. They're like, we get that spell block is a concern, and we're seeing some abilities you guys are scared of. So we're going to look at those abilities to ensure they're fair. But like, are you going to... Do you... As a developer, do you really want to do that every single patch? Like, oh, let's do our warrior check. Or do you think it's maybe a little easier to solve that problem by, you know, just giving them a button to deal with magic damage, which they had, you know? But maybe just make it less complicated? I don't know. This just sounds like a problem you're pushing off to the future, you know? Regarding the power level of Spellbreaker and Hunker Down, man, I just don't know what those are. I'm assuming one of them is the one where it's just like you take less magic damage, basically. Because I remember that being announced in replacement of this, and it just wasn't good enough. They are not intended to be replacements at the same power level of Spell Block. Yeah, that was assumed. When Spell Block worked on an attack, it was an extremely powerful mitigation, and we feel it would be too strong on an effect that works on all magic damage. The Hunker Down Spellbreaker node offers a choice between on-demand or passive. And again, we will continue to work to ensure the tools you have are strong enough to survive magic attacks and difficult. Yeah, sure, but I just feel like they're pushing a problem into the future. You're gonna have to deal with this again. Okay. Oh, we can't read the Wowhead data mine thing. It's unreadable. Monk's even more mandatory in Mythic Raid in patch 11.2. Okay, so this is about specifically... Can I just get the entire notes? The natty notes? Okay, here we go. Perfect. We might have to scroll down. Oh, no, it's right here, right? So 2 hours ago. Which, by the way, this week, strap the fuck in for raid testing. There's 3 hours of heroic raid testing tomorrow, although I wouldn't look too much into that because they're just the first 3 bosses, and we've already seen them on normal, so it's like not super important, but we're testing every single mythic boss except for, of course, the last boss on Thursday and Friday. So that's going to be a fucking grind. I actually don't like that they do this, but all G, the raid is coming out pretty soon, huh? So let's read this shit. Exterminate deals 20% increased damage, and Reaper's Mark can stack up to 15 additional times, and upon exploding, it increases your crit strike by 10% for 8 seconds. That's a change to the 4-piece. I don't know what the other 4-piece was, but I'm assuming by them changing it that the other one was too OP or was really, really bad. Something about 2 set with this. Tier set changes. Can we get DKs? Can we just get a vibe check real quick from the tier set changes? They're just buffing the tier, I'm assuming. It's already busted. Shit. All right, cool. And they buffed Frost. I mean, there's just going to be a lot of Frost notes every single week. because they just made so many changes. And Unholy as well. Like, they technically are changing Unholy, even though there's significantly less changes. Okay, Unholy Mastery has an additional effect, what is Unholy's Mastery right now? Isn't it just like shadow damage? Something like that? Minion and shadow? Okay, but now it has an additional effect. Increases the critical strike damage of your minions and diseases by 20%, scaling at a reduced amount. Okay, so it doesn't scale at the same as other mastery things, just like a baseline thing. What is this? Did they feel like crit just wasn't good enough for Unholy? So they're giving crit some value? Even if crit doesn't end up being one of your best 2 stats, because I know historically Unholy's been like haste mastery, at least in raid. Maybe there's some crit mastery stuff for like specifically wound build in Unholy. But if Unholy doesn't want any crit, I don't think this is bad, because you guys are like, well, we already don't want crit and we're not going to want it after this either, but it still gives some extra value to crit, and that's good because early in a patch you don't have perfect gear. You know, you kind of, especially like during the race, you just kind of have what you have. You know, a lot of times eye level is king, and if you have to be rocking a crit piece, it feeling less bad. I would just say this is true in general. Any class that has a stat that you never want in his dog shit, them making the stats a little closer together is really good. Like, I mean, I've played a spec for a while that was just bad every single season because they just didn't scale with haste or mastery, and you just played crit verse. And it was just miserable, right? Because those others, like, having your stats not matter sucks. Okay. Menacing Magus now causes Magus of the Dead Shadow Bolt to fire up to 8 nearby enemies. Wait, that's the Magus AoE thing. Are they increasing the target cap of Unholy? Or not in general, but just of that specific ability? It was 4, used to be 5. Dude, that's sick. Is this... Sorry, unless I'm wrong, when was the last time that Blizzard intentionally increased the target cap of an ability rather than capping it? I'm a fan of no uncapped AoE, but literally everyone's AoE is like capped to 8. I think 8's chill. 8 and then square root scaling after that, not hard capped. I think uncapped shit is like most 8 is always fine. And then you could actually like balance AoE, since the whole like different target count proficiency thing just never worked. All right. Epidemic increased, death coil increased. Okay. Some hero talent changes for DH. Druid Illumin's Chosen. 2-set bonus. Star Surges cast by this set bonus no longer trigger Lunation's cooldown reduction effect. This interaction was unintended and added more power to the set than desired. Is this the reason why Moonkins were doing like actually double everyone's damage on PTR? Like literally double. So that's would expected that would get looked at. If not, we'll continue looking at it. You know what? Someone actually asked me the other day, they didn't ask me. They just like brought it up in conversation, and they said that you never actually want to be like super, super crazy good in PTR, because then you're going to get nerfed. You want to be like right under the best stuff, and then that's like the sweet spot to be. I actually don't think that's true. I think like sometimes that can be true. I think like when I was thinking of specs that have been just absurdly broken in PTR, I think you'd rather be those specs, because those specs are always still really good. Like what doesn't happen often ever is, well, not ever. What doesn't happen often is something super fucking crazy insane, at least if it's not entirely defined by like a bug or something, but they're just like really powerful. I can't even remember a time. I'm sure there is one. I can't remember a time where like that class was so bad because they over nerfed it because it was so powerful. They usually under nerf it and it ends up still being really strong or still the best class. Evoker. made some changes. Evokers, can I get a vibe check? I'm not reading this. Are there people who identify as evokers now? Yeah, I guess it's been out long enough. Like people who just fully main swapped. I just wonder how many there are. I guess right now evokers like on live is like pretty strong, so there's probably a decent amount of them. They're lizard maxing. All right, thank you. That explains. Yeah. Okay. Cool BM stuff, mage stuff. All right, here's the big one. Mystic Touch now increases physical damage taken by 8%, was 5. Dev notes, the amount of classes that deal pure physical damage is quite a bit less than those that can deal magic damage. For this reason, we are making some targeted adjustments to Mystic Touch to better improve its overall effectiveness for physical damage dealers. So this has a lot of effects on current stuff, because this actually is just a straight up, like, pretty decent buff for a few specs in the game. There's not too many pure Fizz or mostly Fizz classes in the game. But those classes are just waking up today, not exactly, but like 3% better, right? But this is very interesting to me, because raid buffs basically should be good enough to get your class into a raid all the time. And then, ideally, in my opinion, no stronger than that. Because then it overvalues in Mythic Plus. And then there's like some raid buffs that can be sat and others that never can. But ideally, I think raid buffs' purpose is that exactly as they're stated. They want you to bring one of each class in a raid. So them buffing this, monks were not at risk of being sat. Like, yes, there's a lot less physical. If you look at any Warcraft log in like a World First race, the majority of the damage is magic. Even melee classes are often like more magic than physical now in a lot of cases, to where Chaos Brand over indexes. However, they nerfed Chaos Brand, right? They nerfed Arcane Intellect, mostly because of Mythic Plus. So that shows you that Mythic Plus is clearly on their mind too, because it was like defining a Mythic Plus meta. So they followed that line of thinking. They nerfed Arcane Intellect and Havoc from 5 to 3. Do you still bring a mage and a DH buff to every single raid encounter? Yes. So were those nerfs good? Yes. All right, but you weren't not bringing monks. In fact, something that's kind of interesting is this patch specifically, there's actually, I think, almost for the first time ever, there's a completely separate comp that's been timing the highest keys in Mythic Plus. Now, some people might hear that and be like, no, you ran varied comps in all of these other seasons. Bro, recently, a varied comp is like 4 of the same classes, and then you swap one thing out for another, or 2 things. But the basis of the comp stays the same. There's a group running, which, by the way, they also don't use comms, which I find extremely Giga Chad, that are running 5 completely different specs, and it's because of raid buffs, right? They're playing Battle Shout, they're playing the monk buff, they're playing a feral druid instead of balance, because all of these buffs synergize with each other as being purely physical related, where the other comp is about buffing your magic damage, and they're all running specs that do a shitload of magic damage, right? That's really fucking cool. That exists this season. So this, of all times, to be like, we're buffing Mystic Touch, I find to be really interesting, because if you look at yourself why they've buffed or nerfed raid buffs recently, they've been too OP in Mythic Plus, and they're still represented in raids. Monks were not at risk of being sat in raids. You were going to still bring... Is it possible you could play a comp where monk buff and monks were so bad, all 3 specs, that it actually wasn't worth bringing? It's possible. Extremely unlikely, but possible. But the number 8% is kind of huge. So I don't really have an issue with this. I don't think this really changes much. Maybe it like makes physical comp and Mythic Plus like really, really strong because of this, and then obviously they'd probably revert it if that was the case for a whole season. But in raids, this is, I guess it just makes it 100% that you'll always bring a monk. It's really interesting they decided to do this. Like, I wouldn't have surprised me if they did this before they nerfed Chaos Brand, but after they nerfed Chaos Brand, having 1B3 and 1B8 is kind of crazy. I don't really understand how something can be too OP for Mythic Plus. The standard of key levels will just be higher. You're looking at it the wrong way. I don't mean it'll be too OP for Mythic Plus so you time higher keys. Anytime you're worried about something being too OP in Mythic Plus, you feel like you need a spec and cannot compete at the same level without one. And you want to avoid that as much as possible, right? Like similar to when AUG like felt like it couldn't be replaced, or God Comp in Season 2 of Dragonflight after the patch. Like that's the thing you're concerned about. You don't want a single comp to be a single or 2 key levels higher than everyone else. You'd ideally have as many comps as possible be able to complete the same key level. It's like impossible to do that with how WoW is made, but that's the goal, right? That's so interesting. It also, this is another thing that's interesting, is if there's ever a split in raid, you obviously want to make sure that if you're only playing one monk, that your physical damage dealers are kind of all on the same side. You can kind of get away with this now because there isn't a ton of people that just do pure fizz, but like a lot of times you split on a fight and you don't have 2 demon hunters and you still have to have some magic users. I remember early on Razageth, we wanted to have 1 demon hunter on one side and all of the casters, and then like we split it up like that, but then like that just wasn't even because melee classes just cleaved better than range classes did. So we had to have some melee go on the side without a monk, and some range go on the side without a demon hunter. So like this being that strong, I guess it could affect raid splits slightly. So Nexus King and Dementius, they both have 10-10 raid splits killing ads on a platform. Side note, kind of interesting they did that on 2 bosses in a row. I don't think that's ever happened before. I didn't like realize that until right now. I mean, I knew about that. I just didn't like put it together. All right, cool. So that's a thing. Lightsmith. Shaman. Ooh, reduced Ascendance uptime from Ellie's 2 set. Same thing with Enhance. Felt like that was too good. Am I reading 725%? So that button just did absolutely no damage before, or it's now the hardest hitting ability in the whole game. One of those two. Nerfed Execute from Slayer. Wait. Spellbreaker has been updated. Now has an 8% chance to affect a magic damage event, but reduces damage taken by 50. So I think what it was before was they basically made it... What this talent was before, right, was it was a 4% chance to, like, nullify a magic event. So it was basically parry for magic. But then they just made it happen twice as much, but reduces the damage by 50. So basically, this is what you'd hope parry is, right? Like, if you have 10% parry, any tank would rather have 20% like half parry, if that makes sense. Like, you only mitigate 50% of it rather than 10% you ignore all of it, because it's not consistent, right? You want some level of consistency, especially with massive huge hits. So I don't think that's a bad change. And I still think most of the issue with Prot Warriors is that, and Blizzard already said this in their dev note, people are saying this is bad because they're assuming this is supposed to replace spell block. But they said, like, it isn't supposed to replace. We thought it was too strong. But yeah, I mean, they'll find out this season if Warriors, like, can't live magic hits, and then they'll have to obviously make a change. Dungans. Players can now vote to abandon a Mythic Plus run after a key is socketed. This we already knew about. It's available for testing now. Players who leave runs before completion, timer end, or a successful vote to abandon will eventually be marked as Keystone Deserters. So it takes multiple leaves. Marked players can compete in Mythic Plus runs without leaving, even if untimed, to bring themselves back into good standing and remove their Deserters mark. We've talked about this a lot before. We'll see if this has any kind of effect. I still believe there's not a ton of leaving that's like purely griefing. Like you join the run with the intention to leave. It also depends on what level. I'll just leave it up because like most stuff, as my opinion, is like doing hierarchies, which like usually you wipe one time and then someone leaves, but like you aren't going to time that key. So why spend 30 minutes not timing a key if you wiped on the first pull? Like everyone should kind of leave, you know? But like at lower guild level or lower levels, when you're just trying to farm like your vault, like a 10 or a 12, you're just trying to get a vault and then someone leaves and you have to start over again. That objectively sucks, which I think is probably what this is targeting, right? In which case, they should be trying to do stuff to make that less of a thing. All right. Vote to abandon will be standard practice and courtesy wiping the key. I know that's been a take, right? Like, people will vote to abandon, and if it doesn't pass, instead of leaving and getting the deserters mark, they're just going to fucking grief you over and over again. That will happen, but implying that every single person who would rather leave the key and the vote fails is going to do that, because like it does take an extra level of not giving a fuck or hating everyone else around you to do that. Like, we know from League solo queue, people will run it down mid. That is true, but I don't think it would be every single person, because it's just like the biggest douchebag thing you could ever do, right? I would like to believe that if people vote no, they would continue playing for a little bit unless it got worse or something, like most people, but certainly there will be a fair amount of people that do it. Maybe I have too much faith in humanity. Can ignore everything about PvP. Cool. Damn, season's coming out in 4 weeks? 5 weeks from today? They should focus on how resilient keys work in Mythic Plus. You currently wait 2 to 3 hours in LFG for a group on higher keys. If the resilient key was the one you ever, and the game would be more accessible progress. Oh, we ran into some language barrier shit at the end. People would be blasting. Yeah, we've talked about resilient keys a fair amount, right? There's like an economy of keys that are just below the like cutting edge level that people don't run anymore because their resilience are all higher than that. So they just never interact with it, where a couple seasons ago, it was a more stable economy of players and groups, because even people who were at that higher level of key would still do homework keys and go down to like join to play. But a decent bit of those players just don't do that anymore. So like it's harder. It makes the key level group, if you group a couple key levels together right below the top couple, a lot harder to find groups because of that. I still think resilient keystones are a very good thing. In fact, I don't really know why they don't exist like in all of Mythic Plus, like every single key level, like from the very beginning. Maybe the same issue. Maybe people never find anyone to run 4s because everyone has resilient 10s or something. But I feel like people who are doing 10s and 12s are never doing 4s anyways. I don't know. Max, have you seen a trend or style in the new raid compares to or before? Or if you see what Blizzard wants raiding to be in future expansions? Oh, well, that second question was a lot, but... I mean, yeah, I mean, this raid has, like, a pretty similar theme to, like, stuff you've seen before. Like if I can, like, throw out what the raid looks like... Like, the first boss is just, like, a super reggy first boss. Second boss, pretty easy, unique mechanic, cool vibe. Third boss is, like, AoE with a little bit of, like, ad spawns that you can kind of choose. Have to do some mechanics right to get the ads to come out. And then the fourth boss is, like, a really cool, like, actually, it's, like heavy multi-dot fight. Kind of like the sticks of the tier in a way where, like, just a certain type of damage is just way more important than others. And then I'll just forget Soul Hunters right now because it's technically an optional boss, but it just looks like pretty easy. But then the last three, which is really what most raids are made of, you know, like a raid is often, I think, defined by like its last three bosses, in which case you have like a single target burn fight that's going to be a really short in rage. I'm thinking close to like 4 minutes, maybe 4.5, 5. Pure single target, which is cool. Like the last boss that I think was that short of an enrage was like Butcher, for example. And then second to last boss, I went over it on like a little YouTube short. But it's really cool. It's got like some Nexus Princess Kaiveza sucks and some geometry going on. Little ad phase, really cool looking mechanics. And then the last guy looks really cool. Wait to see it more, you know? A lot going on in the last fight. That's for sure. Last phase of the last fight is like so much shit. Any hope for a Mythic phase? No, there's no Mythic phase. Might be the hardest raid boss ever. Yeah, I mean, if Blizzard's going to... I think... Well, I don't know if this is going to be true, because they've had multiple interviews where people asked them about the difficulty of Gallywix, and they basically said the difficulty was fine. Like, most raiders want a boss to be closer to Gallywix than it is to Ansarek, for example. And basically, it was only, like, not up to par for, like, the race, but most everyone else had, like, very normal pull counts on it. And there's logic to that making sense. I'm in the race, so it kind of sucks for us, but like, you know, that Blizzard's basically said they weren't affected by it that much. That being said, am I really believing that? Like, here's what I think. Like, if Blizzard's tuning raid bosses is really hard, it's like a really tight margin. But if they're going to miss on this raid, like normal, they're going to miss with it being too hard, because what you can do is you can nerf something. Obviously, it super sucks for us to fight bosses that are just way too hard and clearly have to be nerfed. Like, they're just overtuned. You'd obviously love every boss you walk up to be perfectly tuned and as challenging as it should be and not bullshit. But, like, if Blizzard misses, they know they have to miss with it being too hard. And they have a hard time doing this because they can't really test for what we're capable of. Like, they've said this multiple times. Like, I remember after the Fire Act here, they were like, dude, it's like crazy you guys were even able to do that. Because, like, they leave testing a lot of times and they're like, we're just going to make this mechanic. We're going to test and see what's possible and then make it a little harder because we don't know what they're capable of. Ian's exact words were like, you guys did something I actually didn't know was going to be possible. Like, we were going to nerf it and then you were able to actually do it. Right? Because they don't have someone internally that can test what the guilds are able to do. So they kind of have to like get close to that point and then just kind of shoot for a guess of what is good enough. If they don't get high enough, it's not challenging. We make fun of the boss being too easy. And if it's too hard, we complain that everything has to be nerfed. It's a tight margin. I don't know. That all of that being said, I bet the next boss is gonna be fucking insane. It doesn't seem super crazy mechanically reading it, but I don't know. That boy's just gonna have a lot of HP, you know? It's gonna be hard. Max, if you get world first again, it's the first time a guild gets it back to back to back in one expansion, right? People keep saying this. I've been told that's true, but I don't actually know if that's true. Like, for example, didn't Method win every raid in MoP? So, like, they technically didn't win Heart of Fear, but Paragon won every raid in 10-man, and Method won every raid in 25-man. The only one Method didn't win was Heart of Fear. But it's kind of a weird argument because, like, I don't remember exactly what tier it was. Actually, I think tier 11, tier 12. So tier 14 is what it was called. It's the 14th tier in this game. And that tier encompassed, like, right now, I don't remember what the tier numbers are, but, like, Nerebar Palace is a tier. And Liberation of Undermine is a tier. And this is a tier. But back then, Mogish Vault's Heart of Fear and Terrace of Endless Spring were all one tier, tier 14. Kind of similar to like Emerald Nightmare, Trial of Valor, and Nighthold were all one tier. So like, yes, Blood Legion won Heart of Fear, but like they didn't win the tier. Like Method won the tier because they won the one at the end. So if you look at it that way, Method won every raid in Mist of Pandaria. And also Paragon won, but it was in 10-man. So basically I don't know, MoP is kind of weird because you had the two guilds that were, the two best guilds were each playing in a different difficulty or different group size mode, so they weren't actually competing against each other. Right, but yeah, so I don't think that's actually true. Shaw of Fear Heroic was the tier. Yeah, same thing with Nighthold, but like part of that doesn't make any sense to me. Like Method winning Trial of Valor was such a huge deal, and Trial of Valor was a really fucking hard raid. It took like a whole week, even though it was only 3 bosses. But yet we're told that like that just didn't matter. Like Exorcist won Nighthold, so they won that whole tier, so all of that just gets swept under the rug. Like it just doesn't matter. It's not even best 2 out of 3, even though Exorcist won 2 out of 3. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just weird in WoW, and maybe this is why they don't do this anymore, but it was weird in WoW's history that there could be 3 raids in a tier, and someone could win the first 2 and lose the third one, and their position in that tier is purely based on where they came in on the third raid. There's just something about that is just isn't right, you know? Method won all 3 in WoD, right? So the Method one's really, really interesting. Because Method lost Highmaul to Paragon, but they won Blackhand, but that was the last raid. Sorry, that was not the last raid in the game. But Highmaul was kind of like it wasn't its own tier. Like Highmaul and Blackrock Foundry were all part of one tier. This is just what happened at the beginning of every expansion since, forever basically, but... So like technically Method won both tiers in that expansion, but they didn't win all 3 raids. Basically the only way we could be if we win this raid, the first guild to do it is if you just observe the fact that Method lost Heart of Fear and Paragon was playing 10-man and Method lost Highmaul, but even though they won every tier. It's so weird. I don't know, it's just some weird shit. If it didn't release at the same time and it's its own raid and the term tier doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, that's what would make the most sense to me, but that's actually not what people said back then, you know? And if that's the case, then we would be if we won this raid, we would be the first that wasn't a 10-man, because Paragon did win every single raid in MoP, I believe. But also, that's just like a made-up stat. Because, like, why does it matter that you've won 3 raids in an expansion? Guilds have won 3 raids in a row. They just didn't happen to be in the same expansion. Like, for example, Echo won 3 in a row, right? They won Jailer. Wait. Yeah, Sanctum, Jailer, and Vault of the Incarnates, right? So, like, what is it any different if we won these 3? It just all happens to be in the same expansion, you know what I mean? It just doesn't it's just for the vibes. Yeah, I guess so. It's because of the huge morale loss for Echo losing the entire X-Pack. Yeah, but that doesn't change, bro. I remember being on the end of losing 3 times in a row. That shit fucking sucked. Especially because the third one was Razageth. That fucking super stinks. Yeah, who knows? All right, that's about it. Unless there's some other cool Wowhead stuff. All right, we got anything else here? New season 3 titles. This is just the name. Unbound. Pog. That's fucking epic. Okay, one more thing on the monk buff. I keep saying monks would have always been brought. Would you say that 30% of your damage as an entire raid is physical? It totally depends on your comp, but just think of the most average comp ever. Do you think 30% of what your raid is putting out is physical? I think around that number is pretty accurate. It can be a little higher or lower based on what it is, but... I guess it was possible. Like, is the monk buff bad enough to where if you were only playing one hunter, you're only playing one warrior, and all monk specs were dog shit. There's a little other physical stuff, like randomly like pet classes like Demo are like doing physical damage, and even other melee do like 25 to 50% of their damage as phys. Like, was monk buff sittable at 5%? It's kind of not, because, like, dude, you know you have a warrior in your raid, and you know you have a hunter in every raid. Is it possible hunter could be sat for their raid buff on a specific boss? Yes, but I think there's only one in the last, like, 5 years I can think of where you actually would have. And on that boss, they were randomly, like, the best class in the game, so you wouldn't have sat them. The answer is no, right? Because, like, even bringing one monk means you're buffing your warrior that you're guaranteed to have, which I guess it could be a tank, and your hunter by 5% each. That is fucking huge. That's like PI, basically, for 2 classes. PI is about, like, a 5% increase over a whole fight. I mean, even alone, like, I mean, I guess so this title is right, even more mandatory. Like, monks were basically, you could run a simulation of just random tuning over the next 3 or 4 years. I bet you wouldn't have sat monk one time at 5%. Max, can Evoker get a real buff now? Yeah, dude, I feel like Evoker is the class that hasn't been talked about enough in all this raid buff stuff. Like, people complain about Hunter. They're like, bro, there could be a boss where you don't care about damage 100 to 80 and Hunters suck. And you're right. That could happen. It's very rare, but it could happen. Obviously, DK's main thing, just grip is a raid buff, but there isn't a grip on every boss and all that stuff. But like Evokers are just flying right under the sun, bro. Warlock are so locked into raid. Like Warlocks are so good. Like Hellstones alone would make Warlocks required. And then they also have Gateway, which Gateway is about as powerful as grip is. Like I'd say in every raid, there's probably just as many mandatory grips as there are mandatory gateways. Like you gateway a lot more often than you need grips, but most gateways are not mandatory. They're just kind of good, or a lot of times like whatever. It's mainly Hellstones for Warlock, and then for a lot of people, when you're looking at progression as a means of like time is really relevant, which makes sense. Time is relevant to everyone. Warlock's wipe recovery and summons has tremendous value, especially in like pug raids. But like I look at Warlock more as like getting from 100 to 0. You know, like get wipe recovery and summons don't actually increase your power in combat. So I'm just looking at it a little differently, but I'm acknowledging that they're there, right? Evokers are interesting because like you can say like, oh, well, like you always bring an evoker, so this isn't a problem. And what we're referring to, like, yes, they have a lot of utility, and the reason you bring them to a raid is because of time spiral, because of rescue, because of potentially spatial paradox, because of external renewing blaze, right? Rewind, no, like Rewind's usually just like a regular healing cooldown. It's very rare that it has like tremendous random value that other healing cities don't. But it's for those reasons, right? It's not because of their 1 hour raid buff, which they have. They're the only class in the game that has a 1 hour raid buff they apply to everyone in the raid that kind of doesn't matter. Like it does matter, but it doesn't. Like I was considering sitting at last tier. Here's the issue. Every single tier Evoker has existed so far, there has been at least one Evoker spec that has been absurdly powerful. Right? Devastation recently, Preservation Season 1 of this expansion, AUG since it came out until like last year. Right? The raid, like you can say like, yeah, they get their raid spot because of all those really good pieces of utility, but do you really know if they have that raid spot if they were really average? Because you've never had to really ask that question because they really haven't ever been average. The most average Evokers have ever been was this raid in the Race to World First, before they got buffed. Like the version of Evoker you know right now was not that good in the raid. They buffed them after the race was over. So like, and you did sit them on one boss, but you still brought them, right? And maybe it's because of all of those things. But I'm just saying Evokers flying under the radar with their raid buff not being good enough because their class has been powerful. If we ever run into a situation where all three Evoker specs are super mid, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because you can say all that stuff is so valuable and you'd bring them anyway, but I don't know if that's true, because damage and throughput is king. Damage and healing. It's all that other stuff is great, but like it really sometimes it's just about how much damage and healing you're doing. So I think there's a tier where like they could run into the same issue where they feel like they don't have a raid buff. Well, Evoker being absurdly powerful is necessary to balance their awful transmog options. So true. And we'll end the stream on that. All right. See you guys later.